Good morning and welcome back to the madness. This is Covers Daily NCAA Tournament Edition, Day 2 of the round of 64. I'm Jason Logan, Covers Senior Industry Analyst, and with me is Covers lead college hoops analyst, Rohit Ponnaiya. Rohit, how's that bracket hanging, buddy?
You know, it's doing okay in a couple of regions, doing all right out in the south and the east, and not doing so hot in the other areas, but it'll all even out. We'll see. Lots of time left.
Yeah, the less I say about my bracket, probably the better. So day for some bets as well too. So today we're going to jump on right into the action here. We've got a full slate of games as well. We're going to give you our best bets for every single game on the board. And Rohit, you're going to start us off here. Best bets for the Midwest here on Friday.
Yeah, perfect. Let's start off with the early game. We've got Jacksonville State taking on Auburn. Auburn chalk minus 15.5 right now. The big thing, of course, is down the stretch. The Tigers did not cover 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 games. Definitely some shaky guard play there, but I don't think it's going to cost them in this one against a Jacksonville State team that doesn't force a lot of turnovers, doesn't really put much pressure on opposing ball handlers. Let's not forget that the Tigers were one of the best ATS teams in the country earlier in the season when they were just beating up on non-conference foes. First 10 games of the season, Auburn had 7 wins by at least 17 points. Jacksonville State, it's a big step up in competition for them. And let's not forget that they probably shouldn't even really be in the field of 64. They lost to Jacksonville in their conference tournament semifinals. But fortunately for them, Bellarmine doesn't qualify for the tournament because it hasn't been in Div 1 that long. Big problem for Jacksonville State is they turn the ball over a ton. Their strength of their offense is their three-point shooting, but they've gone kind of cold from that area lately. In their last 2 games, they're shooting just about 20% from deep. Now they're taking on an Auburn team that defends well on the perimeter, and if their outside shots aren't falling, they're going to have to attack inside. That's not going to work out. You're going up against Walker Kessler, a guy who averages more than 4 blocks per game. You're going up against a Tigers defense that holds opponents to a 42.6 field goal percentage inside the arc. So I think it's going to be an all-around tough game for Jacksonville State in this one, and I'm backing Auburn at minus 15.5. Moving on over to Colgate against Wisconsin. This should be an interesting one here. My best bet is actually the under 139.5. Badgers, of course, feature that Big Ten Player of the Year, Johnny Davis, 20 points per game. I do think he's, get back to where he was a little bit earlier in the year. He was banged up in their loss 2 games ago. He was definitely hurting when he went 3 for 17 from the field in against Michigan State. But even with Davis in their lineup, this isn't a high-scoring Wisconsin team. They're very methodical. They take their time with the ball. They have scored 70 points or fewer in 9 of their last 12 games. Going up against a Colgate team that, of course, they're known for their shooters, fantastic outside shooters on this team. But this is still a team that also plays at a slower pace, prefers to probe and look for openings and defenses before getting that perfect shot off. Colgate's averaging about 75.4 points per game, but that's against some weak competition. Earlier in the season when they were playing against tougher opponents, they had scored 70 points or fewer in 9 of their first 12 games of the year against Div 1 foes. I'm thinking we're going to see a little bit of a slower one than maybe odds makers predict. There might be some efficiency in terms of shooting, but it's not going to be a high-scoring one. I'm liking the under 139.5. Moving on over to what I think might end up being the game of the day. We've got Miami going against USC. This line has moved a tick. I grabbed it originally at USC minus 1.5. Now you're seeing it at minus 2.5 at most places. These teams are really interesting. In some ways, they're very similar. They're both 9-5 straight up in their last 14 games, but they're built completely differently. Hurricanes are a guard-dominant team. They shoot the ball very well. They limit turnovers, but they're small. They struggle on the glass, and they don't defend well. They rank outside the top 300 in both rebounding rate and opponent field goal percentage. Now you're looking at the Trojans, who have one of the tallest lineups around. They dominate on the boards. They defend very well. They're 25th in rebounding rate, 11th in opponent field goal percentage. Now, they don't have the greatest perimeter play. They're among the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. That, of course, makes me a little bit worried about backing them in what should be a close game. But I think that the gulf between the defensive play of these two teams is much larger than the gap between their success on offense. And I think USC size is just going to be too much in this one. I backed them at minus 1.5, still very confident in them at minus 2 in this one. Moving on over to the final game I have on here, we've got LSU taking on Iowa State. This is probably my favorite play of the day here. Of course, I think a lot of people are going to be fading LSU with the firing of Will Wade last weekend, just before Selection Sunday. But I wouldn't overvalue that too much. Let's keep in mind that this has kind of been a dark cloud hanging over the Tigers program for a few years now. The Tigers suspended him just before the tournament in 2019 after the wiretap came out, and the Tigers ended up going up and making the Sweet 16. So I wouldn't put too much of emphasis on losing Wade. It might actually be a bit of a relief to the guys on this team. And this is just a really, really bad matchup for Iowa State. They've been just atrocious offensively down the stretch. I mean, they scored fewer than 45 points in 4 games over the last 2 months. That's one of the worst numbers I've ever seen for a team that ends up making the big dance. Iowa State is small. They don't rebound well. They shoot poorly from everywhere. And worst of all, they rank outside the top 300 when it comes to turnovers per play. That's bad news against an LSU team that's among the best in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency and leads the nation in steals per game. LSU is not one of those teams that's going to steal the ball and then just like set up in the half court. They're going to get those turnovers and then they're going to run the floor and get buckets in transition. I like them a lot on the spread at -4.
All right. That is the rundown for the Midwest?
Midwest, yeah.
All right, man. I'm going to jump into my West best bets here. An okay day and an okay tournament so far. 2-3 with my best bets, but 3-2 on sides here in the West, including the final, that first 4 round as well. 2-3 on totals. Looking to turn it around here. I've got some weird best bets. I've got spreads and total bets for like the picks and prediction pieces, but I got some strange derivative bets here for the round of 64 on Friday. And we start with Montana State, number 14, taking on Texas Tech. And I like TTU -15 for the full game here. I think they eventually take over this game. They make adjustments in the second half and wear them down and then bust us open like a piñata. But I do like Montana State +8.5 in the first half. Montana State scoring and their depth, they have an aggressive approach, and I think that's going to match TTU's intensity on defense and perhaps put the Red Raiders on their heels here in the opening half. Bobcats, they came out swinging in the Big Sky tournament. They averaged 36.7 points in the opening 20 minutes of action for that tournament. They put up 41 points in the first half in the title game against Northern Colorado. And Montana State, they also bring in a hot hand here to the NCAA tournament. They shot 42% from three-point range in the conference tournament. Bobcats going to show most of their lives in those opening minutes before that TTU pressure, that deep rotation. Those things start to take their toll after halftime. But considering that the first half spread is a bit here front-loaded at +8.5 and the full game spread -15, I'm going to take Montana State, put a little bit of a scare in the Red Raiders in this early game in the West. Number 11, Notre Dame, and number 6, Alabama is a fun one. And, of course, Notre Dame coming off that thrilling 2-overtime win over Rutgers in the first 4, then had to travel again for this game. I'm not discounting them here, though, at least in the first half. I'm going to take Notre Dame first half money line +135. The Irish, they can slow down Bama. They can force the Tide to play in a half-court set. Notre Dame ranked 314th in terms of opponents' average length of possession. That means they make them chew up the clock. And in that half court, the Crimson Tide look lost. In their last 3 outings, the Tide took on teams Texas A&M, LSU, and Vanderbilt, all of which run fairly slow pace, 93rd or slower in terms of tempo, and they lost. Alabama lost each 3 of those outings. They shot a collective 40% from the floor, which is not good enough, and they coughed up the ball 58 total times in those games. Alabama does have the potential to turn this game into a track meet if the Irish are feeling the effects of that travel up and down and the 2-overtime game. However, I do see Notre Dame carrying the intensity of that second half. They played a very, very strong second half against Rutgers into the first 20 minutes of this round of 64 game and putting this stagnant Alabama squad on its heels. Alabama hasn't played in 8 days here. And then maybe we see the Tide kind of wear and take over. The Irish got off to a really bad start against Rutgers on Wednesday. Coach Mike Bray just laid into them at halftime. They allowed the Scarlet Knights to score 41 points in the first half. If you watch Rutgers, that is a definite anomaly. That's almost 10 points more than their average first half output on the season. Notre Dame's defense was just absolutely transformative in the second half there. They're going to carry that over to this matchup as Bray is going to be preaching a strong start. So Notre Dame first half money line +135. There's a couple ways to play it. You could play Alabama under team total or Notre Dame in those points +2 first half, but I'm going to swing big in case I hit it here with the first half money line. Number 15, Cal State Fullerton takes on Duke, and we all know it's the Coach K farewell tour. For me, the best bet here is Duke winning margin 21 points or more, and that's plus 130. That's where I got it. Beyond what the Titans bring to the court and the history of who Duke is, Cal State Fullerton is in a tough situational spot here in the round of 64. They run the risk of a letdown after edging rival Long Beach State in the Big West tournament final. This CSU Fullerton team was actually picked seventh to win to finish seventh in the Big West during the preseason. And now they have to cross the country, play in South Carolina. This is a venue that's less than 3 hours away from Durham. I'm almost surprised the schedule makers didn't peg them with the early game here and do Duke another favor, as we've seen the Dukies get some favors from the schedule makers from time to time. But Cal State Fullerton, it's a well-rounded team, an experienced team, but just does not have any overwhelming edge against what is a talent-stacked Blue Devils team. Duke is bigger and they're faster. They have a surplus of five-star guys. 5 guys averaging double figures in points. And Krzyzewski knows that he can't let this young team kind of dwell on recent letdowns. They let him down against North Carolina. They let him down in the ACC tournament. They're running out of chances to give him that storybook finish. I think he's going to be pushing on them to right the ship here, set the tone for the rest of the tournament, and a potential run-in with some very, very good defensive teams down the road. So the Blue Devils, they're a good bounce back bet as well. Went 4-1 ATS when coming off a loss this season. This is kind of a shop around prop. Like I said, some places have this plus 130, plus 120, the winning margin of 21 or more. Some books actually have a minus 130 price tag on this Duke to win by 21 or more. So why wouldn't you just lay the 18 at minus 110? It seems silly bookmaking there, but we're going to take them here. 21 or more winning margin. Next up is probably the most divisive game of the day. Davidson versus Michigan State, and a lot of chatter going back and forth on social about this one. But for me, best bet, Michigan State first half under team total 33.5. I told you I had some weird bets for this bets today. Anyone who watched or wagered on the Big Ten tournament had to sit through Michigan State's kind of first half malaise against Wisconsin and Purdue. In those first halves, they pumped out just 20 and 24 points. Those grueling opening frames were followed by a big uptick in output in the second half. But we're going to focus mainly on the first half here for this game with Davidson. Books have MSU's first half team total for the round of 64 game, 33.5, which is pretty much spot on the nose for the Spartans' first half output on the season. However, both MSU and Davidson, they like to drag opponents deep into the shot clock. And, the green and white, they might not have enough possessions to put up 33.5, even if they're playing well on offense here. Davidson does limit foes to 31.1 first half points on the season. They've trimmed that to 24.3 over their past 3 games. Davidson also doesn't give up a whole lot of extra scoring chances. They take care of the basketball. They keep foes off the offensive glass, 13th in defensive rebound rate. That's going to put a lot of pressure on what is a slow starting Michigan State team to really be perfect in the half court set. And the Spartans, they will have Tyson Walker, their starting point guard for this one. However, he is playing on a bum ankle here. So I like Michigan State first half team total under 33.5. Those are my best bets for the Midwest. You want to jump in and give Sean Ronca's best bets for the East?
Yeah, absolutely. East region where we had the biggest upset of the day yesterday, Kentucky knocked out. And if you were riding Ronca, you at least had St. Peter's on the spread. So let's hope we keep things going here. First game on the board over here is Yale against Purdue. Boilermakers, of course, one of the top offenses in the country. They move the ball very well. They attack the basket. 5th best field goal percentage at the rim in the country. They're also lethal from deep. They shoot about 39% from three-point range. Sure, they have cracks on defense. I think we all know that coming into the tournament, but that won't be exposed by a Yale team that ranks outside the top 100 in essentially every offensive metric. Bronco was looking at how 3 seeds fare against 14 seeds that with a gap of 100 spots or better in the Ken Palm ratings. And in those situations, the number 3 seeds have gone 21-7 against the spread since 2006. The Bulldogs are 0-3 against the spread as underdogs of more than 10 points. They've lost those games by an average margin of 28.3 points per game. So they are getting blown out when they're facing those better teams. They're also one of the worst teams in the country at allowing opponents to go on double-digit runs. Everything's lining up for a Purdue romp this one. Soronka's taking Purdue at minus 16.5. Moving on over to the afternoon game, This is another game with a very close line, similar to that USC-Miami game I was talking about earlier. It's Virginia Tech against Texas. Virginia Tech certainly getting a lot of love after that run in the ACC tournament. But if you look at their overall body of work, Texas probably still has a bit of an edge there. You never want to go into a Chris Beard coach team in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Of course, Texas did look a little bit off down the stretch. Had such a great start to the year, 12-2 start, where they gave up just 49.1 points per game. In the 18 games since, they've gone just 500 and have allowed 65.3 points per game. Obviously, a big difference there. But Ronka thinks that has a lot to do with how familiar other Big 12 teams are with the philosophies of Beard. Coming over from Texas Tech, he thinks there's a little bit more of that familiarity there. They understand how to attack that. He doesn't think Virginia Tech's going to be able to do that. He thinks there's going to be a little bit of a hesitancy, a little bit of a time to unlock this defense from the Hokies. And while they caught on fire during the ACC tournament, they'll come out to a slower start in this one, and they'll eventually lose. He had Texas as a pick'em. We've seen that line move now to Texas at -1. So feel free to grab that either Texas -1 or grab it on the money line. Moving on over to the late game, we've got Akron going up against UCLA. Ronka really likes UCLA in this one. So do I. We definitely see that they have a path to get through to the Final Four in this region, but they do have some red flags as well. They managed just a 4-4 record against teams in the field of 64, 5-4 record in quadrant 1 games this year. They also had a pair of quad 2 losses and even a quad 3 loss on their resume. Bruins favored by 13.5 points in this one, and fourth seeds favored by double digits in the opening round are just 6-13 against the spread since 2006. Akron has won 8 games in a row. They do a solid job of hitting their outside shots, getting to the free throw line. And they're also 9-2 as an underdog this season. So if they do those little things, they should be able to keep this game relatively close. Ronka's backing Akron at +13.5. That's it for this region today.
All right. We've got our super busy day here in the South, and Zach Cohen is our guy covering the South region. Just 2 games yesterday. So it means 6 full big games today here. And we're starting with the Fighting Sister Jeans of Loyola Chicago taking on Ohio State. And Zach's best bet for this one is Loyola Chicago at a pick. This Loyola Chicago group, extremely balanced, 42nd in terms of adjusted to offensive efficiency at KenPom, 22nd in adjusted defensive efficiency, that all-holy NCAA metric. Makes them a really tough matchup for the Buckeyes here. 13th in the offense in adjusted offense efficiency, but mediocre defense, and also a couple game time decisions for them as well, too. Wright and Kelly got some shots up yesterday. These two guys, both, like I said, game time decisions for an Ohio State team that really wobbled toward the end. So we're going to look for the Ramblers, do a really good job of making the Buckeyes uncomfortable on the offensive end. So he's going Loyola Chicago as a pick. I'm not sure where that spread is at right now, but it's bouncing around that number. We're going to go to number 15 Delaware versus number 2 Villanova. And Zach's best bet is Villanova -15. Villanova is tied 41st in the nation in opponent field goal percentage, tied 48th in the country in opponent 3-point percentage. And Delaware, meanwhile, tied for just 151st in college basketball in threes made per game. If that number were higher, perhaps there's a chance that the Blue Hens would be able to maybe shoot their way into this big spread, but considering the Wildcats defend the 3-point line really well, while also doing a good job of not letting the teams get easy shots at the rim, it's just hard to see Delaware coming anywhere near this 15-point spread here. So he likes Villanova to cover that -15 in the 15 versus 2 game. Number 13, Chattanooga versus number 4, Illinois. And the best bet for Zach in this one is under 136.5. The Mocs play extremely slow pace on offense. They work the clock until they get a better shot. It shouldn't come as much as a surprise considering this team is coached by Lamont Paris, who was a former assistant under the Wisconsin Badgers who used to put those guys to sleep with that methodical pace. So kind of taking that Bo Ryan playbook there. It's also important to note that this game has the potential of being a little lopsided in the second half. That could slow down things a little bit too. Illinois, pretty solid offensively. They could get up early and then kind of cruise and put it in cruise control in the second half here. So he likes the under 136 in this 13-4 matchup. Wright State taking on number 1 seed Arizona, and he's laying the lumber here with Arizona -21.5 in the 5 games that Arizona was favored by 20 or more points against teams that don't hail from Power 6 conferences this season. The Wildcats were 3-1-1 ATS. Arizona won those games by an average margin of 46 points. God damn. Krisha is a game time decision here, but there's a surplus of talent and size for this Arizona team. And that bigger rotation is a huge part of why he likes Arizona here. They're going to beat up on this Wright State team. Their tallest player that really produces anything tops out at 6'9". So it's going to be a bully day for the bigger, badder Wildcats in this one, minus 21.5. Number 12, UAB versus number 5, Houston. And Zach's going to lay the -8 here with the Houston Cougars. Houston, one of the better balanced teams in all of college basketball, as the Cougars are 10th in the nation in offensive efficiency, 11th in adjusted defensive efficiency. Again, one of these great teams that ranks really high in these important stats come tourney time. The Cougars allow opponents to shoot just 29% from deep, which is 11th best in the nation. And with the way Houston contends shot, and they run shooters off the line, this one has the potential to be an ugly finish, especially for a UAB offense that's going to be challenged here. So he's going to lay the -8 with the Houston Cougars in this one. And finally, number 9, Texas Christian takes on number 8, Seton Hall, another tight one here, but he's going to go under 128.5, a really low total in this one. TCU's 24th in the nation in adjusted defensive efficiency. Seton Hall right there next to them, 26th in that metric. These two teams really do make their opponents work hard for every shot attempt. And definitely there's going to be some physicality as we've seen. I think the officials have really been letting teams play. We've seen some great pounding on the blocks during the tournament here so far. The under is hit in the last 5 games that TCU has played. The team has failed to score in the 70s in 4 of their last 5. The under is also 7-1 in the last 8 games for Seton Hall, and they've scored 70 points or less in 6 of those 8 games. It could just be two teams button heads here. I give the edge of Seton Hall because they're a better free throw shooting team. TCU not great from the foul line, but he is taking the under 128.5. Rohit, I think that wraps it up. Any final thoughts here for the Friday? I think you're muted, pal.
No, I don't really have much more to say. I'm just hoping for some more good games, hoping for a couple upsets as long as the teams I'm backing aren't on the bottom end of those.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern time here for the round of 32 games for Saturday. And then we'll be back also same time on Sunday for those round of 32 games. Good luck with all your picks, all your bets, and all your brackets.